The perfume ad, seen by almost everybody who watched it as promoting rape culture, has been taken down. But how did it get through in the first place? I'm Barkadat, you're with the Mojo story. Today we are looking at the advertisement that has made global headlines for all the wrong reasons. An advertisement that seems to show four men looking at one woman and saying, not so funnily, who will take the shot? There is a clear suggestion of sexual violence in the advertisement, even though it is not articulated overtly. There's also a clear suggestion of a numerical asymmetry, almost creating the semblance and the insinuation of force being used. The biggest names in the world of media and indeed entertainment have condemned this advertisement. The company says the ad has been misunderstood. The advertisement, of course, is now taken down from all platforms. There was more than one ad, by the way, and we'll take a look at both of the ads for this particular product. But how did it get through in the first place? Casual sexism is not new to our media, our films, or our advertisements, but one had really thought that things had got better after sustained pressure and scrutiny. And yet, an ad like this got through. Before we play just a 10-second clip of this advertisement, let me introduce our guests on the program today. We are joined by Nandini Dias. She is, of course, one of the stalwarts of the media and advertising world, and it's great to have her on the program. Also joining us today on the program is well-known feminist activist Tara Krishnaswamy. She has been fighting for the political representation of women, and what are we even messaging vis-a-vis women in public life when an ad like this comes out. And another stalwart of the advertising world, Santosh Desai, who's of course a man of many parts, also an excellent columnist, one of my favorite, joins us on the program as well. And Dr. Ranjana Kumari should be on the program with us in moments from now. Before we get started, we can't and don't want to play the full ad, but we want to give a sense of the weirdness of this ad. Like, it doesn't even pretend. There are four guys, one girl, and this is actually one of the sentences that is in fact spoken in the ad. So if we can bring up the ad with the sound and give our audience, anyone who may have been living under a rock and may have missed it, let's take a look.
हम चार और ये सिर्फ एक
तो शॉट कौन लेगा?
शॉट तो बनता है.
Short to banta hai, seemingly innocuous, the company would argue, causing the kind of outrage, and that's the silver lining that one hasn't seen in a long time. Nandini, let me get started with you. As you talk, we'll also play out another ad made by the same company and give you the key quotes. In fact, if we can just have a look at it before Nandini comes in. So, shot to banta hai, who will take the shot? If you bring up the first advertisement where this was said, they clearly say, the men in this ad, we are four and there is only one. So as I said, that asymmetry of power is actually underlined brazenly in the ad. You can see those four women and this four men and this one woman, and then the men discuss who will take the shot. This is only one of the ads. There's another ad that aired only on television, and there seems to be a man who is telling another group of men, have you taken the shot? And he says, yes, I have. And then they kind of chuckle amongst themselves and they say, now it's our turn. Now, Nandini, the ad is down, but how did it even get made? There was a creative process. There was a company that commissioned it. It went through the hoops. It went through the clearances. What does this tell us about the way our ads are conceived of and then cleared?
Barkha, my sense is, and as we know, no ad agency has claimed to do the ad. So it's highly possible in this new world where everyone thinks that it's, we can create content and it's easy to do so, has tried creating an ad without understanding the nuances and the science and the art that goes behind creating ads. In a normal creation, we actually sometimes sit 3 months just trying to get a brand positioning in place, to figure out every nuance, every expression, every thing that will appear in the ad to see what the implication of that will be for the whole, anyone who sees it. My sense is the person who's created this ad is somebody who gets nothing of all the way the brand gets created, and it is in really really poor taste. I mean, when I saw the ad the first time, and the person and the company has apologized, but I refuse to believe it is inadvertent. It is something that they were not trying. I think this is something that they have deliberately tried creating viral to not spend too much money, get enough controversies. And I can tell you examples of, I know clients who have given this as a brief to the agency. So this, I'm presuming that this is not an inadvertent thing. This is a deliberate thing done, and it's not unknowing. It's a
So
knowing, deliberate act.
I find it very interesting, Nandini, that you say that no agency has claimed ownership and this is possibly made in house. Do you think that it could be that no agency has claimed ownership because who would want to be associated after the backlash? Or do you genuinely believe that it's been made for cheap and it's been made to, in fact, rile up anger, Nandini? What do you think?
So I've tried finding out which agency. There's one or two people who tried putting a false agency, and I think that agency has said that it's not them. So the understanding is that this is an in-house made ad, and
Okay.
this is done so the client cannot even say that it is done by an outside agency and they have not seen it before. So my understanding, it's an in-house done ad.
And you're actually saying that this publicity, the infamy of it, is not unwelcome necessarily, even though it's been called disgusting. It's created recall for this product that at least I had never heard of.
Barkha, I mean, it sounds really terrible and mercenary, but I have known examples in the past, even small and large companies, not just small companies, who have created an controversial ad, deliberately so, put it out on a Friday, so that, there is not much you can do because the offices get shut. Release it and actually give exposure to such an extent that even after it comes out of 4 or 5 days, they have done their task, they've got the impact, they've got its money worth, and now they use the word, it'll go viral.
Yeah.
And then they hope exactly like this, goes viral, and they get, a huge return for the little money that they have spent. So this is, according to me, a deliberate act of, trying to create a brand in this fashion.
So that's actually a very interesting cynical take that all publicity is good publicity, even if it's terrible publicity. Suddenly everybody's talking about you. Suddenly everybody knows your product. Suddenly everybody's doing full programs on it. Santosh, is that a sense you share, or do you think that institutionalized sexism has long been part of not just the advertising but even the media industry, the entertainment industry? What's actually played out here? Because while the company apologizes, it actually doesn't step back from the messaging it wanted to convey. It continues to say the advertisement was wrongly perceived.
I'm not so sure that this was a deliberate act. And I mean, it's possible, of course, but if I had to speculate, I would say for a number of reasons that I think this is part of something deeper, something more fundamental than a self-aware attempt to sort of milk controversies, because that at least would suggest that somebody knows that this was fundamentally wrong. And I think the reason why I suspect that that isn't the case is because, firstly, they've done two ads. I mean, if you wanted to create a controversy, I mean, there's no, one ad was enough. I mean, there was no reason to do the second. And secondly, if you were smart about it, your apology would sound much more like an apology. You could be, sound contrite, because the effect, and you try and limit the damage to the brand, having extracted the value that you did from the
Yeah.
controversy. To me, this seems like genuinely not being able to understand, and genuinely, the sexism that runs so deep that you are unable to actually recognize something as awful as this, and see what you've done. So I think my own sense is that it runs deeper than a cynical attempt to garner a certain amount of publicity. This is and the problem, I think, here very often is that there is a creative culture that uses words like "let's be edgy," and there is a certain vocabulary of creative that somehow decontextualizes a creative kind of a product from the impact it has, and it is a very desensitized kind of an understanding of what passes for a creative, disruptive ads, the kind of words that I usually use in the industry. So my
Yeah.
sense is that it comes from that kind of a perverse creative culture rather than a cynical attempt to milk the controversy.
But let me ask you this. The point has been made by Nandini that there were no hoops and clearances to go through because it was possibly in-house. But there still must be, even in this digital age, one of these ads aired on television, and again, it underlined the four versus one. It's almost like a sort of there's almost like a gang rape subtext to both of these ads, Santosh. How did it get through?
I honestly, there aren't really any established mechanisms to to safeguard against this. Even if it were an agency, it's not as if there is some board of people who sits and screens ads and says, is this going to work, is this not, is this going to offend or ruffle feathers. I mean, the number of ads, even if none of them have been as terrible as this, there are a number of ads that have created controversies, and a number of large brands that have been extremely naive about the potential impact of their advertising. I don't think the industry has woken up to the new reality that every piece of communication that they sent out is in the public domain. It interacts with a huge number of stakeholders who may not really be consumers, and I think there continues to be a certain sort of a lack of self-awareness, and certainly there are no mechanisms. I think this idea that there is this a set of kind of safeguards that are built into this process is completely false. I mean, there is absolutely no safeguard that is available. It is what the brand wants. The only safeguard is people's common sense and their commercial interest. But if so, which is not much of a safeguard. So I don't think there is anything in the process that should give anybody reassurance that there are built-in checks and balances of this kind.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. That actually it's like the wild west. It's like the internet. It's like the internet. I can see Ranjana there, and I'm really hoping her line is stable. But Nandini, you wanted to jump in? Go ahead.
So, just I mean, to I mean, while Santosh thinks it's not deliberate, I find the word short, and in a lot of us know it. There is multiple double meanings to the word short. The couple sitting close, the question saying "short mara lagta hai," on the girl having a frightened expression. Barkha, I don't think if it was just like this, there is a frightened expression, which means that whoever was the creator of the ad knew that a question like that would frighten that girl. And then the person rolling his sleeves and walking in and saying, Ab hamari bari. I
Yeah.
mean, you have to be really naive and, spaced out to not know that this is a deliberate act that you're doing, and it will create controversy. And with the amount of rape and gang rape stories that we are hearing and the problems that is there, to not realize that this will be construed as gang rape. I mean, I just find that difficult. Just to answer that question, the actually tapes do go to the channels, so they get approved by the channel. It's not like a tape doesn't go to a channel. A tape actually goes to the channel, and a Z and a Sony and everybody would have received a tape. They have an approval mechanism. A number comes to the agency, and then only then we are allowed to send the ad. So I also find it difficult to believe that the channels have not seen the creative. Somebody has seen it and let it pass.
Yeah, and I think you make the excellent point about that girl crouching in a corner, looking absolutely mortified and fearful in one of the ads. So that to Santosh's point that this is ingrained sexism. Would ingrained sexism actually lead you to create the persona of a woman who's actually scared? That's a question. Let me take it to Ranjana now. How did this happen, Ranjana? How did it get through?
Well, this was repulsive. This ad is really something which is obnoxious, totally unacceptable. It does promote rape culture. There is absolutely no doubt. Both the ads which were shown, the girl was fearful in both of them, even in that shopping mall and also in the room. And also shot. Did you take a shot? And look at the boys. the body language of the boys, the way they are standing, the way they are looking at her, the kind of entitlement that shows almost that they're going to attack her. So I think this is something which, let's not defend the act. First of all, this is totally unacceptable, and good that it has been, the people have been told, and the country is really really agitated about it. Now the other thing, how did it really go through? That's the biggest question. Now three things. Today only we have released from ASCII, as board member of the ASCII also, we released a guidelines, gender guidelines for the ad. It was so difficult even within the group to arrive at some kind of a common minimum understanding, because it is voluntary guidelines. These are only creating a boundary for the advertisers, and there was so much of doubt whether advertisers will ever agree with this, whether this
And
will
just and just
minimum
to
dignity.
explain, Ranjana, hang on. Just to explain to our audience, ASCII is the Advertising Standards Council of India. It is a self-regulatory body. You cannot mandate it to do anything. So you were trying to create a kind of professional consensus on what the guidelines should be. Go ahead, Ranjana. Yeah.
Absolutely. So now, Barkha, the issue now. So how did it go through? I think this is true that television companies have to review those ads when they are submitted to them. Then only they see it, and then only they air it. And also airing such an ad at the time when the most popular program, that's a cricket match going on, was really something where I think there was some kind of a really hidden agreement between these ad creation and companies of the ad agency as well as the television channels. I just heard this morning when we were releasing the guidelines that even the Disney star said that we never did it because we did not, our community standards did not approve such an ad. So I think there are those mechanisms within self-regulatory mechanism, but where are we really lacking? We are lacking in terms of a good regulatory mechanism by the government. There is nothing where films go through censor. IT platforms, whatever they are streaming, has all these now the boards which we are looking at if there is a complaint coming, but nothing for the ad agencies. It's completely voluntary. Of course it should be, it's creativity, it's all kinds of, but when they cross the boundary like this, I today saw an ad, Barkha, you will be really turning in your systems if you see that ad. Somebody has sent that to me, that also is going to be aired. Anyway, we will stop it at that
What is
level
it?
itself.
What
Well,
what
it's,
happens
it's
in the
a
ad?
man is looking at the back of a woman, and completely exposed, bikini, which is also hardly negligee, not even bikini. And then the man is saying, oh, do you want to really get into and have more, really, this is the language, Varka. And I can forward that ad to you, but please don't show it. Now the whole thing is that today, when we are at a time in our life, in our country, when women have become aware of it, and ads are double-edged sword. You can create change through ad, and you can reinforce stereotype through ad also. And in such a time when we are dealing with rape culture, we are dealing with gang rapes, then come up with this kind of ad. What kind of a creativity is this? How can
I
you
think
call it even any kind of creativity through any semblance of imagination? That you
I
are
just
challenging the girl,
Yeah, I was
making her
just struck.
feel scared.
Yeah, I was just struck by the irony that there was probably more hesitation to air ads that showed what interfaith love. I'm thinking of Tanishq. A whole lot of noise made about a Fab India ad, and the language it used, just innocuous stuff. Those ads have probably been looked at with more scrutiny than this ad, which is patently grotesque, that has been allowed to come through. And I think the point that Santosh was trying to make was not obviously any kind of rationalization, but that we are so inured that there's this kind of brutalization that is internalized that nobody even pays attention. Now, Tara, I think the reason that Ranjana had such a challenge creating a consensus in the Advertising Standards Council is because women's bodies have long either sought to be covered up or stripped. And there's you kind of go from the extreme of draping them in veils and hijabs and ghungards, or you go to a kind of extreme hypersexualization, which the Instagram culture quite perfectly captures. And choice is a very loaded word in gender because we're all products of different kinds of socialization. How do you reach a consent? I'm not talking about this ad. This ad doesn't have any ifs and buts, but how do you reach a consensus on what is sexist and what is not?
A great starting point for us to kind of deconstruct this is the language of the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting themselves in shutting down this ad, right? So, what they have said is, quote, that it is, quote, detrimental to the portrayal of women in the interest of decency and morality. Now, think about this, okay? The ad is portraying men, insinuating that men are going to be ready to misbehave with the woman, are going to be ready to cross boundaries of decency with women, are ready to be immoral with a woman because she is alone, perhaps. Again, the numerical, asymmetry. And yet, what they have said is that it is the decency and morality in the portrayal of the woman that's the problem. All she is doing is sitting there or standing there. And how could it possibly be an indecent portrayal of the woman? So, if you look at the way the male gaze works, right? If you ask a random man, you throw a stone, it hits a random man in Bangalore, and you ask him, is Bangalore safe for women? What do you think about women's safety in Bangalore? He will swear that Bangalore is the safest city on the planet. You ask the women on the streets, and we will tell you that each and every one of us, under some circumstance or the other, has been groped or, whistled at or made comments at. There is a significant difference in the way men seem to view it, and this whole language and vocabulary of how this is portrayed as if it's a female problem. It's actually a male problem. Now imagine if the same verbiage said this is detrimental to the portrayal of men because men are being projected as potential rapists, gang rapists, that a woman can't be safe in the mere presence of men, and it's indecent and immoral to portray men that way, right? So it completely changes public perception if you look at it that way. And then you look at, the way we treat the public. I mean, we as in the public and citizenry treat movies versus ads. Movies are censored, ads are not. Nevertheless, we have extremely progressive movies. It's very common to depict intercaste or interreligious, interfaith, love, marriage. It's very common to depict all kinds of women kind of avenging their rapists, all kinds of things. At the same time, ads are typically extremely stereotypical. You find washing machines being peddled using women to things like cars or alcohol that have nothing to do necessarily with gender being peddled using women looking a particular way. So it seems like the public
Yeah.
tolerance or the public approach towards movies is much more sort of progressive, and then we tolerate extremely regressive ads. So between
I
the language and the
yeah.
vocabulary and the citizens view, I think it's extremely difficult for us to reach a consensus as to something is bad. I'm glad there was outrage, but I feel
Yeah.
there's not enough outrage about ads.
Yeah, and I can see Prahlad Kakar joining us. So before we get him in, I think that's a great point that Tara made about the language of the INB Ministry's takedown of this ad. And I was just wondering if Ranjana and Santosh wanted to briefly add to that. Santosh, I'll start with you. I hadn't actually dwelt on that enough, maybe because we've again grown inured to somehow decency and morality. Even in the law, you have, sort of violating the modesty of a woman instead of just calling it sexual assault. Earlier, we used to call it eve teasing. Again, something that harassment has been romanticized in any number of film songs that we've all grown up humming, that we have all normalized. So, does this ad come from that place? Or as both Nandini and Ranjana spelled out, the woman looks mortified. There's no kind of cuteness or coquettishness or flirtation going on here. There's not even a pretense. She looks mortified in both of the ads. Santosh.
Yeah, so I mean, there's no question that the intention of the ad is to the double meaning here clearly is there is rape that is being threatened, and it turns out to be within the framework of the ad harmless because they were actually not talking about rape, they were talking about the product. That is the construct. I mean, that is it's straightforward. It is actually seeking to exploit the fear of rape and believing that is a creative device. So that really is what is at work, and that is, I would argue that the reason why I think it is in some ways it is a continuation of the kind of language that the ministry uses, because that is the underlying structure that is at work. The underlying structure that is at work is is fundamentally to sort of think about one of the things about which has been talked about a lot is about how when violence against women is reported, how it's always in the passive voice. Women were raped rather than men raped women, right? I mean, all of these are part, I think, of a deeper kind of structure. And I think this ad, therefore, the idea that you can believe that this is a creative device, that the threat of rape is a creative device, and that you can therefore go through the trouble of producing not one but two ads that are actually riding on this as an alleged creative device. To me it speaks about the perverted kind of an idea of creativity that has become confused with the notion of something which is edgy and something that is disruptive. And I think that to me is the problem. Could it also be deliberate an attempt to garner attention? Possibly, but that's not how I would read it.
Sorry, I accidentally muted myself. I wanted to bring in Prahlad, but Ranjana, just briefly, you said you guys had a ferocious debate on agreeing on what the guidelines should be for the Advertising Standards Council. Can you give us an example without breaking anyone's confidence on what were the kind of things there were disagreements on?
Well, I think, Barkha, it's important. I recently joined that board, and also it's important to know that Gender Next report, they came up with a study where they have looked at how the advertisements are looking at the whole gender question. And of course, I've written the preface for that whole report, and I've raised these issues there. And then, of course, they have come up with great effort of the whole board that they came up with this. But one point,
But
you see,
yeah.
nobody is paying attention to the idea that a lot of it is after post creation. After the whatever is done is not when they're shooting it, but when they start to make the woman look like the way they want to make her look. And then all those creativity, so-called creativity, comes post production. So that there was also that kind of a suggestion. Of course, these guidelines are not at all any kind of law or rule. These are only voluntary boundaries to make the advertisers, the creative people in advertising industry, everybody to know that, look, don't cross these boundaries. Don't present and represent every time stereotype. Don't try to create women as an object, and and she's the one who's presented, and her body has to be like something which is very sensuous and things like that. So don't do that. I mean, like, this is something that's the guideline. But of course, there are members who think that no, not necessary. I mean, like, let this open creativity be open. So result is short ad. I mean, this is the creativity, and the ad that
Well,
I've been
it's a
saying.
complicated question, right? You
Yeah.
see, Prahlad, there is one pushback against a kind of puritanical, you know, gaze, and then there's another pushback against the male gaze. And by the way, when we say male gaze, a male gaze can also be a woman behind the camera. As I keep saying, patriarchy and misogyny are both gender neutral. So let us not assume that if a woman makes the ad, she's going to necessarily make it differently. Prahlad, how do you see what's happened in the aftermath of these two ads?
Can I give you a spin on this, Barkha, which you guys have not even thought about?
Or
Can
we may
I
have
give
thought
you?
about it because you joined late. We may have already thought
No,
about it, but go
no,
ahead.
no,
Yeah.
no, no. You wouldn't have thought about it in the way that I'm going to put it to you. That this was not an accident.
Santosh
This was
said
meant to
exactly
be.
that.
No,
Santosh
this was
said
meant to
exactly
be
that.
This was meant to be what it was meant to be, because on a very low budget, they managed to put Topi Penao, the media, into making such an issue out of it that they've got something like 20 crores worth of publicity, where they believe that it's only publicity. Good and bad publicity doesn't matter. You built a brand. That everybody in this country suddenly knows that there is a brand of whatever it is existing that is called short. Did you know that? How long, how much money would they have to spend to actually establish a brand called short, if they had to actually spend advertising money on it and not media, what do you call, hysteria? Okay, however good or bad it is deliberate, and therefore, I believe they should be jailed.
They should be jailed.
Yes, because it's a deliberate provocation of an existing what do you call reaction to get as much mileage as they can out of that reaction and get away by saying, I'm sorry, we are going to withdraw the ad. It's done whatever it had to do.
So you're saying this was a kind of very conscious
Very
gutter
conscious,
level
very
gutter
deliberate.
level
They knew,
sexism bordering on violence, done to knowing that they would get bad publicity, but bad publicity is also good publicity, and they cannot get away
correct,
by a mere apology.
but they thought they could. So I believe that unless we prosecute them and actually jail them, they will try it again and again and again. And then you'll never be rid of this. The kind of people that you got. These are extremely unscrupulous people.
Well, I think I actually got my people mixed up. I think Nandini was the one who actually made the point. Sorry. Santosh made the point that this is ingrained sexism. And Nandini first made the point that this was a deliberate seeking of publicity. So, Nandini, I'm going to bring you in as I correct that to respond to what Prahlad is saying. Obviously, you agree with Prahlad on the first part that this was done deliberately. Do you agree with him on the second that a wishy washy, oh, our ad has been wrongly perceived is simply not enough and there should be criminal prosecution here? Nandini?
I totally agree. Whether it's jail, I'm not sure, but there has to be consequences, because what is there to deter then others to say, okay, good publicity, bad publicity, both works. I think they have to pay damages. Either you just pull the product out of the shelf and say, okay, this doesn't work for 2 months, you cannot have this product on the shelf, and it's out, or they actually pay damages to of some sort. I mean, it doesn't work that, and at a they spend less money, and that's what I was saying, that many of these advertisers actually start an ad on Friday. They know that you can't pull it out because the channels are shut and that it will run. They put disproportionate amount of money on those 4 days, and they say, oh, we are trying to take it out, but by the time you pull it out, the 4 5 days has done its job. And in that really, and you can see the difference in the amount of ads that one would normally air for a normal campaign versus something which is front loaded like that.
Yeah.
So
And
it is, yeah.
no, I just think you make an interesting point that there has to be some commercial cost here, if not
Yeah.
jail time. Prahlad, do you want to add to that? Prahlad, do you want to add to that? Yeah.
Barkha, they haven't even spent money on this ad. Just remember that they just released it once on IPL or something. But what has happened is that there's so much media interest in the ad and there's so much discussion on a national level on this ad that they've solved all their problems of marketing. They just sit back and enjoy themselves and say sorry.
Yeah. So, do you believe that the product, as Nandini is suggesting, Prahlad, should be pulled off the shelf?
Well, either that or they should be put into jail, definitely, for a deliberate and attempt to actually use something despicable to create a brand and to create media hype over the whole thing, and then
So
laugh
this
themselves to the bank.
Yeah, these are very interesting thoughts from both Nandini and Prahlad, and I want responses to them. Ranjan, I'll start with you. Jail time or some sort of penalty for the company in terms of commerce. You see, often there's a complete disassociation between a use of a product and an advertisement around it. So you can find an advertisement repulsive, but not many people care enough to actually not use the product. What Prahlad and Nandini are saying is now everyone knows this product. No one had ever heard of it before this ad. Ranjana, do you agree with either of these
Yes.
suggestions? Yeah.
Yes, I think, Barkha, there is a law. At the moment, of course, in the IT Act and other, it doesn't cover this. And under which law will you really jail them? But at the same time, there is a law. When sexual assault law was created, we did insist on one thing about voyeuristic. This law is completely and fully voyeuristic, and under sexual assault law, they should be punished. There should be, and state should take, or National Commission for Women should take suo motu action and charge sheet them and punish them. So that's the first thing. But of course, it is a commercial act, so there has to be a kind of fine, and that is why we are saying bring in a regulation, bring in a law, rein in these people also, because it's not just this ad. So many, they're reinforcing women's stereotypes. She is washing the clothes, he's reading the newspaper, she's mopping the floor, children are playing around, and she's and anything, any and every ad has reinforcement of the same stereotype. A woman has to be
But can
shown
you,
in a
but
particular
can you
standard. There
jail
is
people?
service she's providing. She's
Okay,
providing a
I mean, you all know how much I hate this ad, and I would love for this company to pay for it. But I'm going to make a complex point here, which may surprise you, and that point is in a question to both Santosh and Tara. If we're When do you start saying criminally prosecute? This ad is violent. This ad is suggesting, four versus one. It is very clearly the subtext
हम
is
चार और ये सिर्फ एक.
rape. But what happens when there is casual sexism? What happens when there's stereotypes of the kind that Ranjana mentioned, Santosh? Do you send people to jail for thinking in stereotypes? You'd have to jail most of the country then, Santosh.
Yeah, no, I think jail. It's I mean, I understand the sentiment, but I really think that it's not about criminalizing, because to attribute intention to something that is so deeply ingrained and which seems natural. In fact, Ranjana mentioned the Gender Next report. In fact, my organization had done that. And what we found interesting was that the things that are there are the egregious kind of representations like this ad, but there are so many commonplace things. For instance, in an ad, you will find rarely a woman enjoying leisure time. Men will be lolling around doing nothing, but women, even if it's in the background, they'll be doing things constantly. They will never be allowed a moment of rest. So even if the product has to do with the woman is in the background while the men are in the foreground. Nobody consciously kind of plans this. This is the kind of stuff that happens, which seems natural. It feels like now how do you penalize something like this? How do you, because it's so difficult to
But
argue
do you still
that
believe, after
You
hearing
don't,
Prahlad, and do you still
no,
believe this ad
you
was
don't
accidental
penalize
sexism?
something that is
Yeah,
exactly
Prahlad?
accidental sexism, which is ingrained in your system, is a different matter. Deliberate, what you call provocation of a fact where you know that after 2 days you can remove the ad and laugh all the way to the bank is a criminal offense.
Santosh?
Yeah, I mean, I understand the sentiment. I'm just not convinced, that, I would attribute, much more to the fact that people have such ingrained sexism that they don't, that genuinely, it is not as if people are as self-aware as both Prahlad and Nandini seem to think. I do think that the
Anybody
problem,
on
because I
the,
think it localizes the problem. It suggests that the
no, no,
problem is only
Ravi,
these people. The problem, I
anybody
think, is
on the
much deeper than
street,
just this ad and these people.
anybody on
Prahlad?
the street will look at this ad and say that they are deliberately provocating, because it's not that they don't know right from wrong. They know that, but they're using the system for their advantage. And that is really, I mean, I'm sorry to say this, but that you cannot ever turn around and give them the benefit of the doubt of saying they didn't know what kind of reaction would happen.
Well,
Nobody in the world.
I, I I think the point you're making is that you can still debate why women are shown as the people who are doing the housework, the washing of clothes. Even when they're sitting in boardrooms, they're telling their kitchens what to make for dinner while they're closing deals. That's ingrained sexism. But when you put four men against a woman who's looking scared and you say who's going to take the shot, how is that kind of a consequence of unthinking sexism, Santosh? I want to bring in Tara. Yet is the answer jail them, take their products off the shelf? I'd be quite happy if whoever made this ad is jailed, or whoever, the company cleared it. The company has to have more accountability than a wishy-washy apology. But what should that accountability be, Tara?
I actually have a completely different view. I don't think they should be jailed or they should be criminalized. We cannot govern by criminalizing everything. Ads, movies, politics, all of this is a reflection of the society we live in.
But
And
this
what
is rape. We're
I'm,
talking
I'm, I'm
about,
coming there.
yeah.
And as an anti rape activist, as someone who fights for gender, I can tell you that we are not going to solve this problem by jailing people who make ads like this. And the reason I say that is because today you have movies that depict women in the most grossest of fashions, in the most vulgar of fashions, just ordinary commercial movies that are cleared for being shown. So this kind of double standard doesn't help send a message to society. By there are so many movies that openly suggest and show rape, justify rape. They put the blame on the victim. There are a million movies like that that are cleared even today. So why is it I can do a painting or a sculpture that openly depicts rape, and if it is an ad, My point is that this needs to change, but this cannot change by criminalization. There is another side to the coin. We should stop looking only at one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is also incentivization. Even if you look at ASCII, what is ASCII's verbiage on this? The people that sit in the regulation themselves, whether it's the ministry or ASCII, ASCII's verbiage says the advertisement should contain nothing indecent and vulgar in the depiction of women. How are the women being depicted in a vulgar and indecent fashion in this ad? So we are thoroughly confused, Lord. Why don't you set up, why doesn't the advertising industry set up awards for progressive ads? Just
I'm
the way
sure it
women.
does. I'm sure it does. I'm sure there are those
So that,
awards. But
what I'm saying is there are many, many ways to
okay,
send the
can I
message.
ask you briefly, because I need to start taking last comments. What should be the accountability of the company that commissioned this ad,
Action.
according to you? Tara, since
Yes.
you don't agree with jail, hang on, Prahlad. Tara, since you don't agree with jail, what should be the accountability?
The public outrage and the shutting down of that ad is the best thing that can happen.
I
Not
think
government. Government
Prahlad is making the point that that public outrage will punish the ad, not the product. Prahlad, let's bring you in.
Correct.
Prahlad, are you
The
there?
product is
Yeah.
going to sell. It's already become a success. It's become a household name. What
Yeah.
are we talking about?
Yeah.
It's
And
like
it's
having spent 20 to 30 crores on a weekend, on every half an hour running that. It's the same kind of impact. Look at what the impact is. Look at what the calculation of the impact is. Don't give them the benefit of the doubt. This was deliberate, and I have no doubt about that.
okay, Ranjana, what do you think?
Well, there has to be some action which is penal action. There is absolutely no way you can just let outrage be the punishment. There's no way that we can say that, oh, look, they have been banned. What does that mean? Where are the people who created it? Where are the people who really produced it? And who are the people who aired it? And why did they air it? And do you know, during the cricket IPL, I mean, what is this? Children are watching it, men are watching it, women are watching, everybody, and every few minutes it was breaking and the ad was coming. If somebody was watching the match will agree with me. So what is the punishment? Why should we not think about such? And there are, of course, there is a line has to be drawn between creative, suggestive, and also between very healthy ads. And there are, by the way, there are advertisements who are getting rewarded for going for a good quality work. So it's not that there are no positive
Okay,
responses
I
to it.
actually think it's not so complicated to separate the language of sexual violence from ingrained sexism. But I do take Tara's point that advertisements are not the only space where we see this. The idea of a no not meaning a no has been immortalized in Hindi cinema. It has been immortalized. There's even nostalgia associated with it. So this is a long haul sort of battle. It's a culture war almost. Santosh, last thoughts?
I think that if there is a law that certainly, that can be applied, by all means it should be applied. But I would not, I also think that it's better to also ask another question. Why do channels which have a process of actually screening ads, why was that process not followed? What justifies, and why is there no scrutiny that they undergo? I mean,
Yeah.
they are, as culpable in this matter, as anybody else. So I certainly think that if if there is a systemic problem, tackle it at a systemic level. But I agree with Tara, the fact that if you criminalizing something, it opens. Today this is explicit sexual violence. Tomorrow there will be shades of gray. You open that door to criminalizing things. Where do you stop? It's easy, it feels like muscular action. It feels like we've done something, but that satisfaction can be misleading and can actually have consequences that are unintended. So I am very circumspect about criminalizing things like that at a drop of a hat.
Prahlad, at a time when we had you on the program when Tanishq pulled its ad, Fab India pulled its ad, I do see what Santosh is saying, that while we feel very strongly about sexism, there are other sort of dog whistle issues in our country where if we start criminalizing expression, it can be really grossly misused. I just want to know who made this ad. When both you and Nandini say it was made for cheap, it wasn't an agency. I don't think the guys who make this perfume made the ad. I don't think they know how to. Somebody made this ad. Where's that somebody?
No. But somebody who paid for it and approved it. Remember that. And they were told, and they all sat down, connived, that if we do this slightly unsavory ad, we won't have to run it for the rest of our lives and spend large amounts of money, because it will just be a huge national issue, and media itself will spend large amounts of time discussing it like we are doing today, and giving them free publicity. The thing is, how come on this show that neither the client nor the agency is actually there to defend themselves? They should be here.
Because we don't know which agency made it. Nobody knows who the agency is. I tried
No,
very
but
hard to find
even
who's the agency.
Because
Ranjana, do
there
you
is no
know?
agency, Barkha. There is no agency. There is it's an intern. They've gone to a producer directly.
yeah, so
So this
obviously,
is trying to
obviously
circumvent.
the manufacturer and a filmmaker got together and said, let's topi now the whole bloody world, and let's use
Yeah.
their good offices and their good intentions to make this ad into a national household name.
So I
How's
think though
that?
some of you, yeah, like at least three of the people in this program are advertising sort of stalwarts, and therefore I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, Nandini. I'll give you the last word, but consumer consumption often has nothing to do with the ad. Sometimes when you strike gold, there's a complete synergy between sort of the commerce of it and the creativity of it. But I think the point Prahlad makes it is important. There may be revulsion with the ad, there may not be revulsion with the product. That just seems unfair. At the same time, I hear Tara and Santosh's discomfort with what's the best way to tackle this. Last word to you.
So, Barkha, the first thing I'll say, I totally understand a creative process, and I would hate creativity to be pulled down or to be managed on a daily basis. And that will kill the creativity. So that's not the objective. I think what we can see overtly as deliberate actions to create a certain kind of demand, and in their idea demand, which is not okay, and
Yeah.
and not okay, as a large word I'm using, which is not okay. I think those need to be penalized. What form that penalty takes, whether it and I think jail is extreme. I don't think it's jail, because people are trying to do creative things. But if their sense of creativity is so warped that they don't get that something is this bad, then there has to be some kind of penalty. And in my mind, the manufacturers are going to make money out of the business. How to stop them from making money? So either you pay up for some bit, or you stop the product from being sold for a while. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
which
there
is
has
why,
to be
and it's a
cost.
simplistic solution, but just maybe for a while
Yeah.
it'll deter some others trying to do the same thing, and stop
Wait,
giving the brief to us saying, please create viral communication.
yeah, Tara, where I will agree with what Nandini and Prahlad are saying is that the outrage is not the punishment. I don't think these guys, whoever made them, if you look at the language of their apology, you'll be looking at the verbiage of the ministry and ASCII, the Advertising Standards Council. Look at these people's apology. It's not even an apology. It's not even contrition. It's like, hey, we were the good guys who were misunderstood.
Barka, I misunderstood what I tried to say. I'm not saying the outrage that has happened is a punishment. I'm saying public outrage in general the public outrage can be high enough that it shames them. It isn't that way because it's a reflection of our society, which is not quite there yet. Unfortunately, we don't have enough public outrage. We should
Yeah.
have. It can be the punishment. It's not. Someone can always go to court, right, saying it provokes rape. It's not about passing a law that says anything that's a certain way, we're going to start to penalize it, right? Creative. I'm for free speech and liberalism as much as possible. So I wouldn't want to start to criminalize this sort of thing,
Yeah.
right?
Prahlad,
As reprehensible as it is, as reprehensible as it is.
See,
Prahlad, I'll close with.
personally, because I belong to the industry, and I feel extremely aggrieved that all of us are going to be whitewashed with the same thing that all you guys do this kind of thing. And I know, I can see within this commercial that there was no way that they could have made it inadvertently. There is no way that this was deliberate, and it was a deliberately provocative act to actually make shitloads of money without having to spend it.
And I do agree that they need to pay for it beyond this wishy-washy half non-apology, but we'll
There's
have to
also
leave
a
it there.
generation gap, Barkha, in this, in the sense that nobody will even imagine this was done inadvertently. I think perhaps the old ad industry and the new ad industry haven't yet sort of converged because,
Well, actually, everybody in this program, apart from Santosh, thinks that it was done deliberately. I think Santosh still felt that there's a level of brutalization in the way we think about gender and women. But I don't. I'm
I've
not sure
just
it's a
seen some.
generation gap. Yeah.
No, I've just seen some horrendous scripts come out of the normal advertising process in large agencies who
Yeah.
believe that that is not possible. I have just seen far too many really obnoxious scripts. So, I mean, they
Yeah.
may not have been produced, but that the industry is capable of producing those ideas in the name of creativity. So, I can attribute to stupidity what may not be attributed to malice.
Prahlad?
I think it was done deliberately, and they've succeeded in whatever they were doing, and they're laughing all the way to the
So,
bank.
And that's the point Nandini made but to start with. And where I do agree, I don't actually think, Tara, it's a generation gap. I think, we all think that this is not just a tone deaf ad. There's something, there was something much more vile in the assembly of this scared woman crouching literally as these four men stood over her. And I do agree with what's been said on this program that there has to be a cost more than this apology. But we'll have to leave it there. I don't know. I can't intuitively say what the best cost is, but there has to be a cost that hurts the company and the manufacturers. Thank you very much, Santosh, Prahlad, Ranjana, Tara, and Nandini. Pleasure having you with us. And to our audience, see you tomorrow, same time. Thank you for watching. Goodbye. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.